I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll start tonight with our Pledge of Allegiance by Miss Cunningham.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd also like to recognize Miss Cunningham, who'd like to introduce some special guests that are with us here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very happy to have with us today a group of students from Bethlehem High School and Columbia High School, so someone outside of Albany County as well.
We like them too.
Thank you. Glad to have you.
Go Blue Devils.
This is a group of 7th to 12th graders, and they are participating in a youth and government program, which is through the YMCA. They are working with youth groups all across Albany County. We had hoped they would have, we'd have with us a group from the Albany YMCA as well, so perhaps a future date. But what the group does, they meet once a week, and they talk about legislation, they talk about the legal process, and a group of them also works on communications, drafting press releases, and so forth. At our last meeting, I walked the group through a couple of pieces of legislation that appeared before this group, including the salary equity bill that we passed unanimously, and it was very fortuitous that we had a speaker here today that actually talked about that. But we're delighted to have this group. We have the advisors with us, Bonnie Baker and Andy Baker, also from Bethlehem. It's a wonderful program. I'm sure that you can find it in your own district, but it's a terrific exposure to the governmental process, and we're so thrilled to have the group with us tonight. So thank you for joining us.
We very much appreciate our future leaders being here with us tonight and being part of the process. And I already mentioned to them already that we are live streaming tonight from the whole country, the whole world actually. So you can watch yourself tomorrow on our website. So thank you for coming. I'd ask the clerk to call the roll, please. This will be the roll for the meeting.
Best. Bergdorf.
Yeah.
Blake. Monahan. Smith. Kraus. Cunningham.
Here.
Dawson. Malowitz. Drake. Duncan. Ethier.
Here.
Mine.
Here.
Grimm.
Here.
Higgins. Hogan.
Here.
Andrew Joyce. Raymond Joyce.
Here.
Cox.
Yes.
Lockhart.
Here.
Morrell.
Here.
Mayo. Matt Knight. Clean Lane. Metcalf.
Here.
Miller. O'Brien. Reinhardt.
Here.
Sinorazi. Simpson. Smith.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
Hay. Honey.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
Willing. 34.
34 present. Note that additional sponsors have been filed with the clerk. I'd also like to announce before the meeting, before I forget actually, the Audit and Finance Budget Report is presently up on our website in anticipation of Wednesday night's meeting. If you have any questions or thoughts, I would suggest that you see or talk to the Audit and Finance Chair, Mr. Gamalwitz, or Minority Leader, Mr. Moriello, or Majority Leader, Commisso, before Wednesday night's meeting. So it is on the website presently. Under previous business, Resolution 296A.
Setting the policy of Albany County regarding background checks of employees.
Mr. Bergdorf.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to briefly explain this bill, but first I would like to thank you and Mr. Commisso and Mr. Jeffers and Mr. Ziltme personally for the amount of effort that went into constructing this proposal for Albany County. Back in February, when we went through the ban the box law, which passed unanimously, even with some people suggesting that we should wait until we had a background check bill, we sort of committed that we were going to take a good, long, hard look and try to create a fair sort of universal background check bill for Albany County, and that's what we have before us tonight, Mr. Chairman. We have a background check bill that happens after someone is offered a job. So it is completely consistent with the social justice provisions that this chamber unanimously supported back in February. But what happens is then there will be sort of a universal program throughout the county. The sheriff will be conducting background checks for the appointing authorities in the county. It will still be the discretion of the appointing entities. The sheriff will determine what the criteria are for a background check, it will happen for new employees, for people that are promoted, and believe it or not, there are even some exclusions in the law, people you can't background check. There are some provisions that relate to professional licenses, and there are people such as volunteers at a nursing home, where the law actually affirmatively sets criteria that we can't supersede. So what will happen will be, the other thing that will happen is that in the background check, in addition to a criminal background check, there will be an educational and professional background check. Where if someone says they have a particular degree, you'll determine whether they have a particular degree or a particular license. You'll find out if they have a particular license. And probably one of the most important criteria after talking to the sheriff is that there will be a review of someone's motor vehicle licenses. Because believe it or not, with the amount of cars that the county has on the road and the trucks and the heavy equipment, there are people who oftentimes are either not directly licensed or maybe they have been suspended or had some sort of disciplinary procedure in there. We've got to make sure that that doesn't happen with our county. There is an appeals process where if you are determined to have something in your background that your appointing entity does not think is appropriate, there's an appeals process by which it's consistent with the state law and the procedures in the ban-the-box law, all consistent. When I say it's sort of a universal background check, I think we envision that virtually everybody would go through it. But there is a procedure by which a department head could go to the Legislative Grievance Committee and say, I have a particular position which I don't believe is necessary for a background check, whether it could be a student intern or, you know, I'm not suggesting that that would be what it would be, but there is a safety valve if there is a particular provision. There is complete confidentiality. There would be an annual report by the Department of Human Services, and they would report to the Legislative Personnel Committee without someone's name so that it would be confidential, and that would happen in executive session because what we don't want to be in a position of doing is if somebody had an old conviction or an old item that happened 20 or 30 years ago that really doesn't bear on their employment today, we don't necessarily feel that that needs to be public, but the Personnel Committee will get a full report of all the people who had a positive hit and whether or not they were hired, not hired, or what the circumstances were. And that, in essence, the motor vehicle check, there's a program that many of the local fire departments use. It's called the LENS program, where you enter someone's name and their driver's license numbers, and literally there's real-time reporting so that if somebody were to get into a DWI tomorrow and have their license suspended, you would get immediate notification that they should not be driving a county vehicle. So once again, I hope that we could do this in a thoughtful and bipartisan manner, and I really want to thank Sean and Frank for playing such an active role with this, and the two councils did absolute yeoman's work in terms of meeting with virtually every department head to find out what they do, what they don't do in many instances. And now I think we have probably a policy for this county, which if we adopt it here tonight, will be could well be a model for the rest of the state.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkwood. Mrs. Honey.
I just have a couple of questions for the sponsors. As I read this, doesn't the intent of this sort of nullify the intent of the ban the box legislation?
Absolutely not. I'll let the sponsors of the Ban the Box, what their premise was that when you have a job and you get 10 resumes over here and nobody has a conviction, and you have 3 resumes over here where somebody has a conviction, that you don't consider those 3 because you've got 10 over here, so you just put those people aside. What this does is it puts all 13 in the pile, and if one of the 3 who has a conviction, if it's an old conviction, or it could be one of the 10 who didn't disclose a conviction, because all we had really was self-reporting prior to Ban the Box. There were many departments that really did not undertake what you would call a vigorous check of any kind. So the bottom line is everybody will be treated in the in-bin the same way, and if the background check determines a conviction that is problematic, then it's up to the appointing entity to determine whether or not it's problematic and proceed with the appointment. And what I thought was interesting is when we started this, I was sort of nervous about how CSEA would feel about this. So I asked to meet with CSEA, and they were thrilled by it because they want to know who's sitting next to them, who's working with them, who's sharing their tasks, who's there when they go to lunch and their desk is unattended. So they are very supportive of this. So I think it protects the residents, it protects county employees, and for those workers that, or those potential job attendees that have a conviction that does not impact on the duties of a job that they were going to do, it gives them an opportunity to continue to be considered.
Thank you. I think in both cases, an offense, a conviction would not be disclosed until a qualifying offer had been made to that job in both bills. Am I correct on that?
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Agier?
Yeah, one question. This is not for recent hires, this is for new hires after the effective date.
It is for new hires or anyone who is promoted into a new position.
But after the effective date would take it.
Yes.
This
Is
is
that correct? Yes.
just limited to Albany County.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
What is the cost of this, doing this background check?
Well, in actuality, the sheriff's going to do them for us.
So is he going to have to hire employees to do it, or is he going to have to
Well, the sheriff,
pay for computer searches? Or?
well, I mean, the sheriff has computer databases. They run people. I think we believe that most of these are a question of running a name, a social security number, and date of birth, and seeing if anything affirmative comes back. And then you would have probably whatever information you would deem. But I don't, this is not, I mean, I work for a state agency where we hired a private investigation firm, and you know, everyone was farmed out, if you will, to a firm, and that had a cost. But the sheriff has indicated that his people can routinely do this.
Thank you.
And I think it's important to note that the sheriff employs about 600 of our workforce, the majority of any department, and they have a lot of turnover, so he's used to doing it already. So Ms. Ellis, this is McLean Lane, I'm sorry.
Quick question, did the sheriff's department or did the sheriff state that this will not cost any money?
The sheriff indicated that there was a possibility that there could be some personnel costs. And I think in my dialogue with him, it was a question of, well, you have X number of officers, some which are vacant, some which are full. This is something that, if it became problematic, could be a subject of discussion.
Mr. Bowen?
I think we ought to have a financial cost estimate here. I don't accept that it's not going to cost anything. As a matter of fact, for most local laws, we require it. So I don't see why we're not requiring it in this instance. I think the departments do a background check now. It's very adequate. I don't see the need for vigorous. I disagree with you on that. I think especially the sheriff's department does a wonderful job on background checks. And I think easily the rest of the departments do. I don't see a pressing need for it, but I need to find out how much this is going to cost the county. So I think it's really important that we have that statement.
I don't believe it's going to cost any additional dollars right now. The sheriff has indicated that he would use existing personnel that he already uses for background checks to do the checks. And if it became an issue, we can discuss it down the road. But as of right now, the cost will be minutes.
That doesn't, negate our policy of having a financial statement on it.
I'm giving you the financial statement at zero.
Oh, you're giving me.
Well, I'm the sponsor, and we looked into it. It's the minimums right now. There's no additional personnel being hired as of right now to implement this law.
But there's going to be time spent. Time spent is money short.
Time spent maybe, it will probably be existing personnel. Yes, there will be time spent.
Well, then there's a cost. That's the idea.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Demolition, and by the way, congratulations, happy anniversary,
Thank you,
Mr. Demolition.
All right.
35 years tonight.
Still doing the job he was selected to do.
Look, about 10 years ago, I passed a local law, we passed a local law to do criminal background checks for in-home care workers. At that time, there may not be no cost personnel-wise, but the running through DCJS was $160 each one.
Wow.
So I don't know how thorough of a background check you're going to do, because they do have different levels. My expert, Mr. Klager, can speak to that.
I think they used to have to send the fingerprint cards out. My understanding is they can do those in-house.
That might be, and I'm not sure, but running it through the DCJS database used to get costly. That's something.
That's because DCJS sent those to Morpho to be, they had a subcontractor that did it. I believe it's done in-house. If that isn't correct, I'll let you know. But I believe it's done in-house. Mr. Reinhardt.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something. So we're not just, this bill is not just saying we're going to do this background check before we offer the job. This is additional background checking that we're not currently doing, or some of it is stuff we already do.
I think we do, most departments do background checks. Now, we are setting a policy that all of them will have a uniform policy for all employees. Now, the sheriff does these already.
I was trying to get to the question of what kind of cost are we talking about here. If these are all tests that we're already doing, or let's say 80% of job hires it's already done, and we're only adding this to 20%, that's one thing. If we are putting into law here things that are not currently done at all, and now we're going to be doing it for everybody, it seems like that could have a bigger financial impact than if it's just a few cases where this wasn't done and now it's always going to be done. If we're just doing it before or after the job offer is made as opposed to before, then that doesn't cost anything. But if we're adding tasks to 100% of job hires,
You're correct. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Berger.
You're absolutely right. If 20 people apply for the job and one person is selected, it would be that one person that the sheriff would run their numbers through the computer system. So it is not the 20, it's not the universe, it's the one person that they would make a conditional job offer to. Excuse me? That they have made a conditional job offer.
but would we have done that same effort before we offered the job in the previous world? In other words-
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Well, I guess that's kind of the
In
question.
the sheriff's department, they background check everybody. In the district attorney's office, they background check everybody. You'll find it hard to believe that in the social services department, they background check very few, including the people that had contact with clients. In the youth department, they background check people for the youth matrix crimes, which is, sexual abuse, those sorts of things. But if somebody were a drug salesman and they didn't show up on the youth matrix list, they wouldn't know, and they'd be in charge. They could be in charge of watching children. So those were some of the things that people found. So that the background checks, in many instances, were probably not what you envisioned that they would. Did you cover it? Yeah.
Mr. Review.
Are we doing the background checks before we hire them, are we? Not after?
It would be after a qualifying offer has been made for employment. In other words, we're not going to do checks on those that applied. We would be doing the checks on those that were offered the job only.
We're not gonna hire we're not gonna do any background checks before we hire people?
No, it would be before they're hired. It
Before they're
was
hired.
after an offer was made.
We're not gonna bring anybody in without a background check?
That's correct. And there is some limitations by where we're preempted by state or federal law, maybe in some positions, but for the most part, yes.
So the
That would
majority,
be, the exception is those that are preempted by state or federal law.
but the majority will get a background check before we hire them.
If allowable by law, we will do a background check, correct. Mrs. Cunningham first?
I have a couple concerns. One is, it's really sweeping. The list of individuals, I mean, it's pretty much anybody who would be a potential employee of Albany County. So it doesn't matter if you are an administrative assistant in a department where you don't have any contact with any vulnerable population, no elderly, no children, nobody could potentially.
That's correct.
require that. So I'm concerned about that. I think that,
It doesn't mean that we can't hire them. That means we have, at least
no, I
we know the
understand, but
information.
there is, I mean, that's a big sweeping sort of new enterprise.
Well, you gotta remember, I don't want to interrupt you, but I do want to interject a little bit here. Before being the box, we knew their criminal background when they applied, so they didn't even get a shot to come in the door in a lot of cases, if they disclosed it correctly. Here, it would not be disclosed until after a qualifying offer was made.
So the other section, I just wonder what this means. It's under section 4 policy, that sub D. where it talks about that the county may deny employment to anyone who provides false, fraudulent, misleading statements and answers information during the application process. I'm wondering if the act of omission of something, a conviction or an arrest, would be considered to fall into that category.
The answer is yes on that. That's in place now.
So if they omitted any kind of disclosure of an arrest or whatnot during the interview process.
We don't ask it until after qualifying offer is made. But if they falsified or omitted any pertinent information on an application or resume, that would be certainly be grounds for not hiring. Maybe be illegal.
And then finally, I don't believe that this has no cost. I am the head of an organization that all home health agencies in the state about 8 years ago were required to do criminal history background checks for every single home health aide, personal care worker in the state. And it's a large enterprise. It was a huge mandate, and I can't imagine that there are individuals in the sheriff's office who right now have that excess time on their hands. And if they do, I would be concerned about that. But I'm worried that we're going to be looking at some overtime costs in next year's budget because this is an unfunded mandate that we're placing on the sheriff's department.
Ms. Cunningham, I also in charge of background checks for employees in my municipality, and they cost us about $200 to $250 per person. Because we contract out, we have the ability here to do this in-house with employees that already do that type of work. And the sheriff has indicated to us that it would be de minimis cost to do this. He's indicated willingness to do it, and if it did become an issue, he would come back to us later and state that it was an issue. And this body, whatever we legislate, we can legislate very easily. That's the good thing about some of the policies and procedures we put in place. We can undo it if it's not working correctly. But I think that this policy, from my eyes, and I know from the other sponsors, I don't want to speak for them, but we're looking out for the safety of our employees and the people they serve. And that's why we were looking to get this in place without infringing on their backgrounds until a qualifying offer was made, which is in line with the box. Mr. Grimm first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a representation made earlier that it was unanimous on ban the box. It wasn't. I voted no for this reason. I thought it was reckless to ban the box without having universal background checks for obvious reasons. We don't know who we're hiring. We don't know about the criminal history of somebody we're hiring. That puts every county employee at risk. I don't care if it's an administrative assistant or anybody else. If they've got a criminal background we're not aware of, that puts our county employees at risk. And by the way, it puts the people that the county employees interact with at risk as well. So I believe then and I believe now it is reckless to ban the box without universal background checks. And that's what this law is about. It's a proposal to remedy what I believe is a reckless situation. Everybody is treated fairly. Everybody gets a background check. Everybody is going to be safer as a result of that. In absence of universal background checks, I think we're putting our county employees in a very precarious situation. So the sheriff has indicated that there isn't really much of a cost issue here. And because this is what they do. They have sheriffs who check databases. That's what they do for a living. So I think not to have universal background checks puts us in a very bad situation. I'm concerned about who we hired since we banned the box. I don't know if some of them have criminal histories, and either does the county of Albany. So that's something that we all ought to be concerned about. Thank you.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Yeah, I guess I'm not really sure how I feel about what the financial impact is going to be. I'm hearing numbers and I'm hearing assurances. I guess, though, Sean, you just mentioned that the sheriff is going to be able to kind of track if this does become a financial burden or if he's spending an inordinate amount of time or his people. I would like to propose this as, I don't think we need to change any wording here, but could we have the sheriff monitor the cost of implementation, and also, and I'm not quite sure who would do this, but to look at the implementation, not from a cost perspective, but from the impact perspective of, is this approach that we may pass tonight going to, what impact is it going to have on people who, let's say, get through that first gate where they are made a conditional offer? And then that offer is we don't follow through because we did the background check, we find something wrong, and we go about deciding, okay, we're going to reject this person. Some sort of understanding of what is going on in that process as it happens, so that we know, are we, for example, if somebody wants to make the case, or somebody makes the case, this is negating the bandbox bill, and we're just catching all these people at a later step in the process, but it's the same impact on employment as we would have had before. I think we ought to know that. We ought to, if we see that pattern, we should know it. If it's not doing that,
I don't think it negates bandbox at all. In fact, I think it supplements it, enhances it.
No. What I'm saying is, before we passed ban the box, there were statements that we're disadvantaging a certain population of people to get employment with the county. So now we said, okay, we don't want to do that, so we're going to pass ban the box, and almost all of us voted for it. So now what I'm asking for is an assessment of how does this bill, the ban the box bill combined with this bill, how has it affected our employment? Are we now, by doing this, are we in fact negating what the ban the box tried to fix? Or do we have that problem again, or not?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because after the background check comes up, first of all, they can at that point be asked if they have a criminal background or they've been convicted, is what I should say. If they have been, then they can disclose that, and then the background check will come back and probably confirm that. And then we have a decision to make whether or not what the offense was harsh enough to not hire them, or we can give them a shot based on the fact that maybe it's years ago, or maybe it wasn't that harsh a crime. And I've been there personally myself and have hired those with convictions that have proven themselves to society. So I've been on both sides of the coast. Mr. Berg, I'm sorry, Mr. Ryan.
Well, all I'm trying to say is if we could have some sort of a record of this, a record of cost, if we see that it's becoming significant.
I'm pretty sure the sheriff, you have to remember that half of our workforce, I would guarantee, already does background checks. So if we're going to do a record, we've got to look at the net effect of what it's going to cost, or if it's, we may even save money.
I'd love to know that.
Because
I'd love to know that.
If we're using contractors to do some of these other departments, and now they're going in-house with the sheriff department, there is a potential savings there. We don't know that right now. Maybe Mr. Bergdorf does.
Now, I was going to actually respond to the first part of your question, which is, should we figure out what we're doing here? There's a reporting section in this bill. For the HR department, section 9 does an annual report to the Personnel Committee of the Legislature that says, how many times did this happen? Not by name, because we want to keep that confidential, okay? But it goes to exactly what you were talking about, Bill. What were the circumstances where somebody had a conviction? How many were ultimately hired after that? Were there some convictions that were of such gravity that somebody wasn't hired? So that this legislature, as a policy-making body, will have that analysis once a year to the personnel committee. So that's there. And for that very reason.
That's good. That's good. I had not caught that before. Can we include in this report then as well any cost impacts?
I think the Personnel Committee can ask HR and the sheriff anything at any time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I had Mr. Drake first. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to respond to there are a couple people here with concerns. One of the concerns is, are we being too comprehensive with our list and the action here? And with all due respect, that's the point. We want to be comprehensive. We want to level the playing field. We want to make a ubiquitous and homogeneous approach to how we handle hiring in the county. As the chairman has stated a couple of times, maybe better than 50% of positions are already checked in the same way. We want it to be equal across the board. So that's why we want to include everybody. That doesn't mean that we're putting in a policy here, or proposing to put in a policy here that would encourage discrimination. Quite the opposite. We're giving people the opportunity to put their best foot forward. We pass them the box. They're not coming in and being rejected at the door. Give them their best foot forward. And then, what are we afraid of? Are we afraid of information? Because I'm not afraid of information. I think information is important. People can be honest, and they have the opportunity to represent themselves in the best possible manner. And the person who's hiring now has all the tools at his or her disposal to make a good decision for their departments, for the safety of their coworkers, for the safety of those county residents or taxpayers or anybody else who's affected. And the last thing I'd like to address is the cost issue. And Mr. Reinhardt, not to single you out in particular, there are other people who mentioned that. We pass all kinds of malarkey in this place. With no enforcement provisions, no idea what it's going to cost, who's going to do it, where it's going to come from, ban this, stop that, check this, test that. Why now? Why we care, I'm being a little glib, but we're already doing it for the most part. We've got a staff that knows how to do it well. We've got the statement from the sheriff who said, look, we're willing to take this on, this is reasonable. I think we should give this a go. We have the opportunity to revisit this at any time. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Mr. Clay.
Is that because it's your malarkey?
That's right.
Mr. Clay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really don't want to prolong this discussion. I think it's, as a former law enforcement officer, I think that, I don't know what the argument is. Even if there's a cost to it, if we catch one person, or the person that's doing the background checks, and I did hundreds of them, but if you catch one person, then it's worth it, whatever the cost might be. Given the atmosphere throughout this country today, we ought to be looking at every avenue that we can come up with in order to weed out or catch a potential person. All you have to do is read the news every day. And so I'm not sure what the argument really is about here. Even if, again, not to be redundant, but even if there is a cost, if we can prevent one person with a criminal background, a convicted person, and perhaps save other people, then what's the argument? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Bowen?
I think the county does background checks already, and I think they do a good job. But to pass this local law without a fiscal impact statement violates policy of this body, and I don't agree with it. I think there's an impact. I think there's a serious situation here where we may reject somebody that has false ID on the background check. I think that happens all the time. I wish the Republicans and everybody else were this thorough with gun background checks, because I really would appreciate that right now with all the slaughters that we've got going around in this country. But I don't see the emergency need of saying, hey, we got one of these criminals through our background checks, and that's wonderful, we saved everybody's life. I don't think that's happened. I think we're overreaching here with a county that already has a policy. We have a policy on background checks, and I would think, once again, you're making a mistake. You always tell me, gotta have a fiscal impact statement. let's do it.
Mr. Bullock, I told you, we did a fiscal impact statement. We talked to the sheriff. Unless you talked to the sheriff. Did you talk to the sheriff? Do you have different information than we do?
You don't have.
What information do you have to dispute the fact that I'm telling you the cost of the members? Okay, thank you. Ms. Cunningham,
Just one final question. So are some of these categories of individuals that work currently with vulnerable populations, are we not doing background checks on all of those?
some that are required by law that we do. But what we're saying is maybe, and I don't know the answer to this, but I'm pretty sure that they contract those out, as you stated that you do. And they're very costly. And that's why I believe there's a possibility we could actually save money by having the sheriff do it in-house rather than out of.
But my question is, are there gaps in who we are doing criminal history background checks that include individuals that interact with vulnerable populations? And the answer, Mr. Bergdorf is saying, yes, there are gaps currently.
Yes.
So there are folks that the county is hiring today that interact with children or the disabled or mentally ill individuals or frail elderly that are not currently being background.
Well, that's if it is not required by law. I would believe that anything that is required by law, we are most probable in compliance.
Okay, so we're in compliance
We are.
with existing law, but there may be other categories that of folks that are not currently.
That's correct.
That interact with individuals that they should have.
That's correct. Mr. EQ.
No, what we're saying is we're not going to background check everybody then?
We are going to background check.
We'll do everybody.
Every new employee, every newly promoted.
They'll all be background checked.
Correct.
And who's going to keep a record of this thing? We know
The sheriff.
The sheriff has a record.
That's correct.
So if we come across an employee that we hired and somebody checks into it, we go to the sheriff, and say, Sheriff, for so-and-so background check, he'll have the information for us?
Well, I don't think he's going to give us that information. I don't know if it's due to us, but he'll
I
tell
mean,
us.
a person, if someone wants to find out.
He'll have a record, yes.
There'll be a record.
Correct. And a report will be made to us annually, with the law and personnel committees.
And every department head knows that this has to be done, the background, whoever's going to hire somebody knows.
Human
this has to be done.
Resources is very aware of it, they're part of this process, and they are willing, they're gonna work with the sheriff on this, yes. Every department will be made aware, if not already. Thank you, Mr. Rhino.
Quick question. There seems to be uncertainty on this. Are there some background checks now that we are farming out to private firms to do for us at $120, whatever the price is? And if we pass the law, then all of those background checks that we are now farming out would be done in-house?
Correct and correct. I believe there are some that are done outside in the private sector.
Do we have any idea how much that costs? How much?
Look, I just told you, it costs $200 to $250.
No, total numbers.
Per person.
How, like, do we do 1,000 a year or?
I don't think so. We probably, I don't even want to put a number on it, so. I'm confident we look at human resources knows that. I don't have that information. Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sometimes it gets a little confusing, so I'd just like you to indulge me for a moment if you would. If I apply for a job and I have a criminal background history,
yes,
and I don't check the box, which I'm not.
There is no box.
There is no box.
There is no box. So this is getting rid of check the box?
That's already done.
That's all that last couple months ago. There's no box. Box is gone.
Box is gone. So I, excuse me, I come in and I don't tell you I have a criminal history. And you offer me the job.
I will make a qualifying offer based on
Right,
background.
and then you ask me, is there anything else in your background? Because you're going to do the background check.
Correct.
And I say, well, actually, there was that robbery back in 1995.
Yep.
Now, it's disclosed,
Correct?
you have that information.
Yep.
Whoever is the hiring body, whatever agency, now has an opportunity to say, I don't think we're going to give you this job, even though we offered it to you, because of that. Or they could say, well, it wasn't so bad, so we're going to still give you the job.
Correct.
Either one of those two things.
Well,
can happen.
we would probably do, I'm confident we'd do background.
Well, of course.
Yeah, that would be the next step after.
But that's the next step.
Yes.
And then if for whatever reason you disqualify that candidate, you have to go to the next person. Right?
That's correct.
And we go through the same process again.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Mr. Easley.
Have a long roll call vote, please.
Absolutely. We have a one roll call vote, please.
Mr. Best.
Favor?
Bullock.
No.
Bergdorf.
Aye.
Chapman. Yes. Clay.
Yes.
Lenahan.
Yes.
Camisso.
Yes.
Kraus.
Yes.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Dawson.
Yes.
Demalowitz.
Yes.
Drake.
Yes.
Duncan. Excuse me. Ethier.
Yes.
Feeny.
Yes.
Fine.
Yes.
Grimm.
Yes.
Higgins.
Yes.
Hogan.
Yes.
R. Joyce.
Yes.
Dukakis.
Yes.
Lockhart.
Yes.
Morial.
Yes.
McKnight.
Yes.
McLean Lane.
No.
Mendick.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes.
Signorach.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Touche.
Yes.
Honey.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Looks like 32 and 2.
The resolution passes.
Thank you for making this.
Resolution 429.
Amending Resolution 326 of 2017, authorizing a license agreement with Stewart Shop Corp. Taking use of property at 309 Delaware Avenue, Belmont, New York.
Please note that the Audit and Finance Committee should be added to that as a sponsor. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Resolution passes. Under current business, 430.
Review and amend the Albany County procurement policy.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Resolution passes. 431.
Authorizing an agreement with New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services regarding written license service.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Resolution passes. 432.
Authorizing extension of grant agreement with New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services regarding stop violence against women.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Resolution passes. 433.
Authorizing acceptance of grant funding and agreement with New York State Department of Health regarding New York State autism.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Resolution passes. 434.
Authorizing acceptance of grant funding and agreement with New York State Energy Research and Development Authority regarding clean transportation initiatives and amending the 2017 Albany.
Please note Mr. Stevens' abstention. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Resolution passes. 435.
Authorizing agreements with New York State Industries for the disabled regarding custodial services at the Judicial Center and Family Court buildings.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution passes. 436.
Authorizing supplemental agreement number 1, New York State Department of Transportation regarding County Route 9, Rat Hollow Road over Flax Creek and Townsburg.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution passes. 437.
Authorizing an agreement with Champion Maintenance Contractors regarding painting services.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? No. Roll call, please.
Beston.
Yep.
Bullock.
No.
Bergdorf.
Aye.
Chapman. Clay.
Yeah.
Lenahan.
No.
Camisso. Kraus.
Yes.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Dawson. Demalowitz. Drake.
Yes.
Ethier. Feeny.
Yes.
Fine.
Yes.
Grimm.
Yes.
Higgins.
Yes.
Hogan.
Yes.
Raymond Jones.
No.
Cacus.
Yes.
Lockhart.
Yes.
Morial.
Yes.
McKnight.
Yes.
McLean Lane.
No.
Mendick. Miller.
Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes. Signature.
Yes.
Simpson. Yes. Smith.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Mr. Shea.
Yes.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Looks like 30 to 4.
Resolution passes. 438, please.
Authorizing an agreement with Capital District Educational Opportunity Centers regarding employment orientation and assessment meetings to be conducted by Albany County Department of Social Services and Employment.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution passes. 439.
Authorizing an agreement between Departments of Social Services and Mental Health regarding services for safety net and TANF applicants and recipients.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution passes. 440.
Authorizing a multi-agency move regarding the New York Connect State Program Standards.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution passes. 441.
Authorizing an agreement with Access Transit Inc. regarding brokerage transportation services for eligible seniors.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution passes. 442.
Authorizing agreements with the New York State Office of Children and Family Services and Capital District Child Care Coordinating Council regarding registration services and administrative costs.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution passes. 443.
Authorizing an agreement with Capital Region Workforce Development Board to assume the role of one-stop systems operator amending 2017 adopted.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution passes. 444.
Authorizing acceptance of enhanced funding for the Office of Drug and Family Services and amending 2017 adopted.
All those in favor? Those opposed? Resolution passes. 445.
Authorizing an agreement with Core Tactics Inc. regarding nurse consulting services.
All those in favor? Those opposed? Resolution passes. 446.
Authorizing submission of grant application to the Rupert Community Health Fund regarding treatment and management of kidney disease.
All those in favor? Those opposed? Resolution passes. 447.
Authorizing agreement with Health Research Inc. regarding the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Program.
All those in favor? Those opposed? Resolution passes. 448.
Authorizing acceptance of grant funding and to enter into an agreement with Health Research Inc., New York State Department of Health regarding the local impact grant.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution passes. 449.
Authorizing the submission of a grant application with the New York State Office of Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Services regarding an open access center.
All those in favor? Those opposed? Resolution passes. Mr. Signor.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to group numbers 450 to 460.
All those in favor of grouping 450 to 460 signify by saying aye. Those opposed? All those in favor of resolutions 450 to 460 signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Resolution 450 to 460 is passed.
Chairman,
Yes.
I just want to know by extension of 457. I put it on.
Okay, very well.
We have.
461.
Amending Resolution 480 for 2016 regarding agreement with the Psychiatric Group of Albany for provision of psychiatric services and amending 2017 Albany County.
All those in favor? Those opposed? Resolution passes. Mr. Sigranchi.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make another motion to group resolutions 462 to 472.
All those in favor of grouping resolution 462 to 472 signify by saying aye. Those opposed? All those in favor of resolutions 462 to 472 signify by saying aye. Those opposed?
I sent you 472 also.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Clerk, would you recognize my abstention to 472, please?
472. Very good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Greg, did you abstain on 457 too?
No, it's 472. Yeah, it's 472.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're okay with 457?
Yes.
Thank you. 473, please.
Approving the Albany County Stop DWI Plan 2018 and entering into agreement with the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. 474.
Authorizing the submission of grant application in agreement with the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services regarding 2017 Emergency Management Performance Grant.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution passes. 475.
Authorizing an agreement with the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services regarding the Sheriff's Heroin Addiction Recovery Program.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Resolution passes. 476.
Authorizing an agreement with the New York State Stop DWI Foundation, Inc. regarding the Stop DWI Crackdown High Visibility Enforcement Program.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Resolution passes. 477.
Amending 2017 Department of Social Services budget.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Resolution passes. 478.
Authorizing a licensing agreement with National Grid regarding a pedestrian crossing.
No, Mr. Joyce's extension.
We have that.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Resolution passes. 479.
Designating the Albany County Convention and Visitors Bureau, Inc. as Albany County's tourism promotion agency to receive tourism advertising and promotion grants.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson.
Mr. Chairman, I was doing a little background check on this Albany County Visitor Bureau. We give them over $1 million a year through the tax that we do on hotels and motels. And so right on the homepage of the Albany County Visitors Bureau, there was a picture of a beautiful apple orchard in Rensselaer County. So I asked myself, why would an Albany County tourism agency that we give $1 million a year to be promoting Rensselaer County apple orchard when we have Indian Ladder and other orchards in our own county? Well, it turns out they get money from other counties besides Albany County. They have a contract, I think, with Saratoga, with Warren County to promote Lake George, with Columbia County, I guess with Rensselaer. I don't know if this orchard was in Columbia County or Rensselaer County. But in any case, it wasn't Albany County. So then I said, well, isn't this a conflict of interest? It has our name on it, and yet they're representing other counties and other tourism agencies that compete with our own. So I cannot support this entity. We have an opportunity every so many years to renew this. And we can change it. We can hire somebody else to do this contract. I can't even find out how much the executive director of this agency makes in a year. No one has ever been able to get that information. No one has been able to find out how many contracts they have with other counties. So there's just no transparency here. This has our name on it, and it is not representing our county. It is a clear conflict of interest. So I'm going to be voting no on this, so you have to do a long roll call. Sorry.
That's okay, Mr. Wilson. And somebody else, Mr. Davis?
I just want to raise a brief point that Mr. Dawson just highlighted, and that's the fact that under state statute, we provide them with 1% of our hotel occupancy tax, which, give or take, is worth about $1.5 million. The county potentially facing quite a shortfall with the decision moving on whether or not we should be selling our hockey arena to provide a one-shot revenue this year alone. I tend to agree it's really a separate issue with the hotel tax itself and not this designation. But that money would be better spent helping citizens here in the county through operations. And that's something that I think we'll really have to take a critical look at in the future, is whether we want to continue providing local support to give the Visitors Bureau $1.5 million that we could otherwise be spending, in my opinion, on more fruitful projects here in the city. So I'll vote no on this, and when the hot tax comes up, I look forward to a discussion about whether we should even reauthorize it, given how much money we are providing to the state convention center.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Mr. Bergdorf.
It's very interesting, the picture on the website. But I think if you take a look at the bulk of the conventions, now some do go to Saratoga County, because they're a very attractive venue up there. But we're really trying to promote Albany County and get the new Capitol Center. And we've got a resurgence of hotel rooms in downtown Albany. Heaven knows we have enough beds out on Wolf Road, and there are more coming. But I think it's really to our benefit to have the Convention Bureau be promoting our venue here. And I assume that they are. So probably, while they may have a picture of an orchard that isn't an Albany County orchard, I really hope that they're working with the Times Union Center and the Capitol Center to fill the meeting space and to fill the hotel rooms that create sales tax in this county. Because that's what it's all about, and what we're hearing is sales tax in this county. So I think for that reason, I'm going to be supporting this, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Kamal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bergdorf touched a little bit of what I was going to speak on. The ideally is that this 1% is paid by the traveling public, the people who come and do business and stay here in Albany County. And the hotelers all support it because they know it brings more people here in Albany County staying in those hotels. But the important issue for us for next year is going to be that hotel tax. Because in this year's budget, the Albany County, $2.6 million we haven't covered because of what we lost in our share in the hotel tax. So next year when that comes up, we're going to have to talk about that and to see how we can recover that. The convention center, which is 1/5 the size that it was supposed to be, is getting more money based on the original design. And so they're getting, I don't know, $3-4 million, and $2 million of it aren't monies that should be here for Albany County and not on the backs of the Albany County taxpayers. So, yes.
I just want to point out, you know, the money now, or previously, was used to pay down the debt on the parking garage in the Times Union Center. We've now reissued over $20 million of debt through bonding for all these capital improvements down here to get more people to come to Albany, to get bigger concerts and sporting venues and things like that. Once the formula flips, taxpayers in this county are on the hook to pay that debt off. That's part of the bigger point here.
When we just added all that frontage on the Times Union,
which is great.
Okay, I was told hotel tax money was going to pay for it. That's why I supported it. Wasn't going to cost my constituents a dime. That's all changed now. So, Mr. Chairman, I might be off topic. It's an important issue that we're going to have to discuss with our state leaders up there. Mr. Fahey, Mrs. Fahey, Mr. McDonald, Mr. Breslin, Mr. Steck. They're going to have to come up to the plate and talk about redesigning that hotel tax so we don't wind up paying for that convention center in the Times Union Center.
I think we're all unified in that.
I'm sorry?
I think we're all unified in that discussion.
We'll make it walk up together. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Cunningham.
I do think it's concerning that we don't know about potential conflicts of interest baked into this contract that we have with the convention center. I think at a minimum, we should construct our contract with them and our arrangement with them with parameters that would include some transparency about who their other clients are and who they are promoting as well. If we are, we're paying a lot of money for that contract, and it would seem very wise to build in some language that would ensure that they aren't, simultaneously having another arrangement, Saratoga County or whomever, that is inherently a conflict for them. So I don't know, I think this is probably a year-long arrangement, but I would suggest that we revisit it or somehow, include some language that would establish some parameters or at a minimum disclosure of that information, because that is really concerning. I mean, it's a lot of money. They are the convention center in Albany County. So while, it's nice that they promote the region, they're primarily, we are their client, and their job is to deliver on that very lucrative contract that they have to deliver and bring business into Albany County and the city of Albany. So that's really concerning.
Thank you. Ms. Lockhart?
Mr. Chairman, just like a little clarification. I think I understand this as by designating the Corporation Albany County Convention and Visitor Bureau as our tourist promotion agency, that enables them to go after certain grants and promotional fees or promotional advertising that they otherwise wouldn't on our behalf to be used for.
We're just authorizing them. It's our tourism agency.
Right. And then further, they can go after certain types of grants and so forth that would benefit your Albany County. Right. Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, the old formula, the convention center got 1 cent, and they're getting 1 cent in the new formula. But there is a sharp change. The TU Center used to get 4 cents, we're going to get 2 cents. So on $8.5 million of hotel tax, that's $1.4 million per each cent.
I think they,
that's a big hit. I mean, so as Mr. Duane was just saying.
I don't think it was a hit that we had any control.
No, state law. The day that the center opened, state law changed the distribution system. But the state law was based on a much larger idea of a convention center, which scaled down greatly, but the formula wasn't changed.
I think we all agree on that.
Yeah, so it's a point worth underscoring that we've got some work to do.
So we're gonna have bipartisan support when we go up there?
Absolutely.
You got to get the audience.
I'll grab Senator Emmett. Yeah, just on one side, can we confirm that they do have other contracts with other counties? Because that is quite surprising.
I don't know. Contract answer to that. I don't want to speak to that at this point.
Okay, it's in their annual report. If you can ever get it.
Okay.
So I think it would be nice to find out some more information about what contracts they have with other counties. But I don't think it's a real problem that they are promoting the region overall, as long as they're focusing on Albany County. I think if someone's coming to Albany, let's say staying in downtown Albany or on Wolf Road, and they go to the visitor center to see what types of things to do, I don't think it's a problem if the visitor center says, you can visit the Capitol, you can go to, these various places in Albany County, and there's also the racetrack in Saratoga. I think it would be kind of strange if they, left out some of the key areas in the region that, any visitor would want to know about. I think it might hurt overall visitor center. So if they're getting some money from the other counties, for this promotion, I don't see a problem with that, as long as their main focus is on promoting Albany County. Although I would like to learn more about what exactly they're doing and what type of revenue they're bringing in from their promotion. The other day, it occurred to me, I saw the sign on 787. It says Visitor Center right before you get off of Clinton Ave. And it's, it's just a small little blue sign that says Visitor Center. Maybe they should have a big sign that says Albany County Visitor Center with the logo. It looks like there's more they could do to really promote that.
I think they're in a historic area. I don't think a big sign fits in.
Well, maybe a little bigger, maybe,
A little more history.
My point is that
if you Google it, I bet you can find it.
my point is I think there may be more they can do to promote the visitor center more and promote the county better. And I think it's good that we're all asking these questions, trying to get some more information.
Thank you. We ready to vote? How about one roll call, please?
Sure. 479. Baskin.
In favor.
Muller.
No.
Burgdorf.
Aye.
Chapman.
Yes.
Clay.
Yes.
Monahan.
Yes.
Abyssal.
Yes.
Kraus.
Yes.
Huntington.
No.
Dawson.
No.
Demalowitz.
Yes.
Drake.
Yes.
Ethier.
Yes.
Feeney.
Yes.
Fine.
Yes.
Grimm.
Yes.
Higgins.
No.
Hogan.
Yes.
Joyce.
Yes.
Lakakis.
Yes.
Lockhart.
Yes.
Mariello.
Yes.
McKnight.
Yes.
McLean Lane.
Yes.
Mendick.
No.
Miller.
Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes.
Signarochi.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Stevens.
No.
Touche.
Yes.
Honey.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
That was a yes, baby. Thank you. Looks like 28-6.
Resolution passes 28-6. Resolution 480, please.
Authorizing cancellation and chargeback of unenforceable delinquent real property tax liens in the town of Colony.
I'd like to refer that back to audit and finance, please. 481.
Authorizing conveyance of various parcels of real property to the Albany County Land Bank Corporation.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution passes 482.
I would remember the Albany County Human Rights Commission.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Resolution passes 483.
I would remember the Albany County Human Rights Commission.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution passes 484.
Reapportion members to the Community Services. Appointment of members to the Community Services Board Subcommittee on Alcoholism and Substance Abuse.
Ms. Cunny?
Just a question, is it routine that we have individuals serving on these boards that are not residents of Albany County?
Yeah, I explained this at caucus. First of all, I don't know whether she's a resident or not. She has a Niskayuna address. I do know that part of Niskayuna is in Albany County, but I do know the person who is very active on the heroin task force for Albany County and works in Albany for the council. I'm sorry, the name escapes me, but I know they're working with the sheriff on the heroin task force. She is very active in Albany County, and she may live in Albany County, I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
But it is not routine yet. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Resolution passes. Local laws.
Mr. Chairman,
Ralph?
I'd like to make a motion pursuant to Rule 11 to suspend the rules of the legislature. For Resolution 45.
We have a request for Rule 11 for Resolution 485 from Mr. Sigarachi. We have a second. We have a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those in favor of Resolution 485 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The resolution passes. Local laws.
Local Law H of 2017, a local law of the County of Albany, New York, authorizing a lease agreement with the Soldiers on Inc. for a term not to exceed 65 years.
One roll call, please.
Beston.
Yes.
Bullock.
Yes.
Burgdorf.
Yes.
Chapman. Clay.
Yes.
Monahan.
Yes.
Cabesso. Kraus.
Yes.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Dawson. Malowitz.
Yes.
Yes.
Ethier.
Yes.
Meany.
Yes.
Klein. Grimm.
Yes.
Higgins. Hogan.
Yes.
Joyce. Takis. Lockhart.
Yes.
Mario.
Yes.
McKnight.
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Menden.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
O'Brien. Reinhardt.
Yes.
Signarochi.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Smith. Stevens.
Yes.
Touche.
Yes.
Honey.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Thank you.
34-0 unanimous. Local law passes.
Local Law I for 2017, a local law of the County of Albany, New York, amending Local Law 2 for 2010 and eliminating the 10-year limitation on tax exemptions for Old War era veterans.
One roll call, please. Mr. Kraus?
I'd like to add to that, please.
Mr. Kraus would like to be added on that, Mr. Reinhardt?
Yep.
Mr. Bergdorf? Is there anybody that does not want to be added? Put the entire legislature on? Very good. Bobby Doobie, only because the local law. You gotta make it official, Mr. Higgins. So let the entire legislature as sponsors
Heston. Bullock. Bergdorf. Chapman. Blake. Monahan. Kissel. Kraus. Cunningham.
Yes.
Dawson. Mulder. Rick.
Yep.
Ethier.
Yes.
Joyce. Backus. Burrill.
Yes.
McKnight. Leanne Lane. Mendick and Miller. Reinhardt. Sigurd. Simpson. Smith. Stevens. Shea. Cunningham. Thomas.
Yes. We have motion to adjourn? Second?